This video is made in response to Steve Gregg's recent video on full preterism. And I've never done anything like this, especially with Steve Gregg. I've kind of left him in the past because he has, they're old, well-established theories that most middle of the road churches like the Catholic Church and the Lutherans, they're kind of middle of the road ideas. He's what's known as a partial preterist, amillennialist, and basically these terms mean where you stand on certain issues. Now, I myself am not a preterist. If you were to classify me, you would put me in that category. I'm not sure which one is which. He just explained hyperpreterism and full preterism, and I guess they're the same. I don't know. But I am not a preterist. But when I read the Bible, and I've been reading classical Greek and learning classical Greek, which is pre-biblical Greek or Koine Greek or Common Greek, more simplified Greek. Is where I've been concentrating on lately to prove exactly what is being said here. And I know Steve claims to know a couple things about Greek words, but it refers to lexicons that, we'll get into a little later. But I wanted to start off with, I used to listen to Steve because someone told me about him. He had a complete series on the Bible, the New Testament, on the internet, and you could listen to him voice, the MP3s, and I would, sit back at work and listen to him. And then a couple years later, I retired and started reading the Bible for myself. And I found, a lot of the stuff, about 50, I'd say at least 50% of the stuff, at minimum, to be good and pretty solid. He grew up in a dispensational church. Looks like him and his dad had some issues, and he took a different position, and he started to gravitate towards this well-established, religious view that had, a lot of people that wrote on it. You could tell that he reads a lot of books. And I think he's just kept it up over the years. And in doing so, developed a theology out of it. It's not a great theology. I think, in general, anyone that takes a theology on the Bible or an opinion, especially religious opinion, is just really shooting themselves in the foot. Because it puts you in a category that you can't really work your way out of, and especially if you're, like he said in his video that I'm responding to, you get into these groups of people, and this could be anything, anybody, even non-religious, and if you say something, especially in a religious church, I couldn't go to a Calvinist church and say, well, the Virgin Mary was an eternal virgin. They probably hit the ceiling. But when you put yourself and paint yourself into a corner, and you put yourself in one of these boxes, if you think you're a round peg and you try to put yourself in a round hole, you're kind of stuck there. So if you come across something later, it's quite inconvenient to change your mind, unless you're willing to completely change your mind and maybe go to another church that you feel is better, for example. The people of preterism I'm not really that well versed on. I don't know that much about it because I've stayed away from it, given the fact that they have similar views that I've been finding, and that is mostly that a lot of these things are past. And in listening to him, I've noticed that a lot of people that used to hang around Steve Gregg and listen to him, there seems to be a large amount that became preterists, like full preterists, as he described it. I don't know if he understands this, but what he's doing is he's saying, I'm going to guide you through this desert, metaphorically, and we're going to find some water. And, you're going through the forest or the desert, and you just kind of come to a stop. And he goes, well, this is where we stop, and, Jesus is going to bring us that water someday. But these people, they're not stupid. I mean, they've been reading and studying, and to just stop like that in the middle of nowhere I don't think it's really enough for them. I don't know if it was really enough for me, but I just kept going. I didn't, you know, I wasn't being led by Steve. I was listening to him, but Steve's not my leader. And they begin to look around and, they look and say, well, there's water right there. And they just kind of detach themselves from Steve and go over by the water. And that's what I think he's doing. I also recall a debate with him and Don Preston a long time ago when I did listen to Steve a lot more. And he said himself, I can be convinced to be a full preterist. It didn't seem like he was too far away from it. That's an actual quote by him. But then he wrote some book, and I know Don Preston, someone wrote on these comments here that he made videos in opposition to Steve's book. I never listened to him. Again, I kind of stay away from preterists because I don't want their ideas coming into my ideas when I'm thinking about the New Testament as I'm reading it. So for now, I'm still staying away from that crowd. But Steve, in this video, saying a lot of stuff that he he's been consistent throughout the years. I've never really heard him flip flop, but then again, he does flip flop. He'll say things like, "I could be a preterist," and then turn around and write a book against preterism. So I'd say he's quite two-faced in that. My experience that I think people should know is that I used to call him his radio show, and I'd ask him questions, and they weren't great answers. I don't get great answers from Bart Ehrman when I'm asking questions. I mean, really, you just kind of get this answer, and I don't expect much, and that's fine. But with him in particular, especially like with Luke 17:21, I wanted to talk to him more about it. But he would get he would freak out because I'm about ready to say something that he does not want revealed, in this evil nature of that's inside of him comes out, and he would put me on pause and then hang up. And in this one occasion, he went on like another minute and a half diatribe of how I don't know how to study, and and other things to cover up what was about ready to be mentioned. He knew what was going on, and I don't respect that at all. If you don't agree, that's fine. But Bart Ehrman is the same way, the exact same way as Steve Gregg with Luke 17:21. He didn't listen to anything either, but he did listen. He's not afraid of it. He's a debater as well, and he used a couple of his debating tricks to make it seem like I didn't know what I was talking about. But I made a video on him, and I recently just discovered the things that we were talking about all of a sudden got erased from his blog. They're not there anymore. Huh. Imagine that. That's happened before. But unfortunately for Bart Ehrman, I have records of everything that was said back and forth. But that's a different story. But at least Bart was listening, and he didn't want to listen to any facts either. Yeah, he already made up his mind. There's this Virgin Mary is an eternal virgin I mentioned before, and then there's this other crowd that says, oh no, the Bible says she has kids. Now, this type of information, a reasonable person, I think, I'll take myself, can say, well, that could be true. Probably not, but it's a possibility. I would not take that position if I was in a religious organization like the Catholics. I wouldn't take that position. There's just too much information that shows that it's probably not true. And to go around and tell other people that stuff, knowing what's in there, that's not good. Um, and it's the same thing with this Luke 21 or Luke 17:21 business, where you have insurmountable amount of information that it is not among you or in the midst or anything else. And people like Bart Ehrman, he didn't listen, and Steve Gregg didn't listen either, because after he did that little stunt on his radio show, I even emailed him and tried to give him a second chance, but you know he didn't listen either. But a reasonable person would say, well, you know what? It's possible. I guess you could look at it both ways. I prefer this one, but no. Oh no, they completely ignore the information, and that's how it was for 1,700 years. So it's it's not something you can just shoo away. You could forget about it and separate the old world from the new world, and that's basically what they're doing with these. They keep claiming Bart Ehrman did the same thing. Oh, just look at this concordance. Well, I don't care what that concordance is. Concordances are as common as these Bible uh, versions. You know, there's people that, oh, well, we use this concordance because it agrees with what we say, but we don't use that concordance. It's all catered to whatever's popular, basically. And Steve Gregg and Bart Ehrman, they take the modern popular view because it mixes in well with their theology. And again, like I said before, take the side of God and the words of God through Christ. Not a theology. And he wants this theology. Bart Ehrman is an atheist and he has a theology, which is kind of weird. But God's going to give them all the theology they want. He'll fill them up with all the theology they can handle, and if that's what they want, if that's what they choose, which they have, good luck. God's not going to stop you and say, no, you need to see clearly because for some reason you're so special. It doesn't work that way. When you have these events, when I was listening throughout the New Testament that are occurring, and I'll stick mostly to the Gospels, the three Gospels, we get into the apocalyptic chapters, and that seems to be a big topic. And I'll attack that one as far as preterism goes. But in Steve's mind, these events have an alternate ending than what they really are. He subscribes to things that say, like if in Matthew, a certain portion happened, but then for some reason out of the blue, the rest of it didn't happen. That's future. And then they'll manipulate some other scriptures as well to kind of coincide. They need like a witness or two, just a couple verses. So they manipulate those scriptures as well. Then it's funny, Bart Ehrman has the exact same view, and it's a crap view. It really is. It's just you're reading, and then all of a sudden it just stops, and then they go, oh, now it just stops, and we're waiting for Jesus for 2,000 years now. We're still waiting for Jesus. I think Judaism, the Mosaic covenant, lasted what, 1,250 years? Let's just say one and a quarter. 2,000 years later, and Jesus has what's he waiting for? Everyone. I'm not saying you have to give the exact date, but exactly what is Jesus or God or whoever they think's coming is actually waiting on. What's he waiting for? Things like going to heaven. God said. Well, actually, someone else did, but God will end death. And he'll give the kingdom back to God. And God will say, come and sit at my right hand. But a lot of people will say, well, yeah, Jesus is sitting at the right hand of God right now. But he hasn't given the kingdom back yet to God. That's still future. Well, it's out of sequence. This doesn't make any sense. Uh, Going back to these apocalyptic chapters, you know, he was saying something that was really dumb about how, again, he's twisting scripture. He's doing these sleight of hand tricks where he will say, oh, well, he's talking to everyone. He's talking to the generation. He's making comments such as this. But the problem is Jesus is talking to four people. He's giving only four people this apocalyptic speech. And he's telling them, they ask a question, and he's just saying, look, the temple's going to come down. I don't know what's going to happen. It's funny because everyone thinks Jesus is God, but he says he doesn't know what's going to happen. Only the Father knows. So obviously he's not God, or another proof that he's not God. But I'm pretty sure he's a Trinitarian. He thinks Jesus is God, so I don't even understand what they're talking about because it just doesn't make any sense. They try to rationalize things. It's just, the Trinity is just really bad. It's not part of any teaching of any apostles or Christ. But, again, they just make stuff up and everyone accepts it. And that's the other thing. Everyone goes along with it, so it must be right. Just like when the Nazis took over Austria, 90% of the people in Austria voted for annexation. So I guess that was a good thing, right? So as long as everyone goes along with it, it's accurate and it's right. But it's not right. Jesus is not talking to us. We're hearing this message. But and I don't know where he gets it. Steve reads a lot of books, and I don't know what books he's reading, but he just takes little pieces of things here and there, I've noticed, and just kind of splices them together to create his own religion. That's pretty similar to this on millennial. I don't know what kind of church it would be. Church of Christ, something like that, probably. But he is splicing together a religion and a view, and it's not based on any accuracy. And I don't know what the preterists are doing or why he disagrees, and I'm sure they got some funky stuff going on there too. But I'm here to talk about Steve Gregg responding to preterists, but I'm focusing on Steve Gregg and his views and his theology. So Jesus is talking to four people. Mark 13. Is it Mark 13 or 14? The apocalyptic chapter in Mark. Andrew, James, Peter, and John. Four people. And he's telling the story to these four. In Matthew and Luke, it doesn't say who he's talking to, but we have the relevant parallel passage, so we know he's talking to just the four. He's not talking to anyone else, because then it would contradict. And he's saying all these things. He develops a timeline, and he develops a sequence. And they're all one after another. They're like dominoes. Once one falls, it hits another one, and it just keeps going until they're all down, until it's all finished. Early on in the 2nd, 3rd century, whenever, people started to have a problem with the reading that they were getting when they would read the original New Testament manuscripts. I'm sure they had the originals or copies of the originals that were in existence at that time. And they said, well, wait a minute. This says Jesus is going to come back, but it's like 150 AD and he ain't here yet. That's a big problem, especially if you're trying to start a religion like, Constantine did. It's a very big problem. So what do? They just reinterpret it. They reimagined the New Testament. And they also did so without the book of Revelation. And God knows what else. But they all kind of got together and said, hey, let's just say this part happened, but then the part where Jesus comes back, we're just going to wait on that. That was almost 2,000 years ago, 1,900 years ago, 1,800 years ago from today when they were doing this. We just kind of went with it because why not? No one knows what they're talking about anyway. And the ones that do, just send them to Patmos or something. Uh, the rulers that want to take power aren't going to put up with that. They aren't going to allow any turds in the punch bowl. So they can get rid of them at any time. But Steve, through his vast readings of books that he has in his library there, and I'm going to be doing another video on people with these books and libraries. It's going to be an eye opener, and it's going to be very scathing. So I'm trying to be nice about it and be educational. But it's kind of hard not to when you're dealing with these types of people that do these things. And what Steve is doing is he's just copying and pasting scripture without copying and pasting. What he's doing is what everyone else does with these new versions of the Bible. He manipulates and twists the Bible to get it to say what he wants. There's a huge disconnect between him and what he's saying, and what the Greek actually says. He has no conception of Greek, Attic Greek, classical Greek, whatever you want to call it, and later on what became Koine or Market Greek, Common Greek. He just doesn't know. But he does know the things that are in his best interest to say. He knows everything. Again, he's a debater. So he's a manipulator. He's good at manipulating people. That's what a debater is. People that go up against someone else and try to convince everyone through manipulation. You don't have to. But he does. I've seen him do it. And he does it basically every time he talks because he created a narrative. He has painted himself into a corner and he has to keep it up. And he's probably like, I don't know, 100. So he ain't going to be around for too much longer. So who cares? And, I'm quite sure he's delusional enough where he thinks he's actually doing a good thing. So he's not concerned on that part in explaining what he's done here. Which he won't have to because it's already been done. Whatever has been done or is going to be done has already been done. He'll just figure it out when he passes away and whatever the system is in place. Whether it actually goes in front of God or not, I don't know. Excuse me. But so he's just going to keep chugging along. But I have a problem with it because people do listen to him. I was one of those people, and people need to know that he's not being honest at all about these passages. Not even close. You notice that he doesn't really go to Luke a lot. If you take the three Gospels, and I have videos about that too, if you take them side by side, Matthew, Mark, Luke, even sometimes John, but mostly the three, you cannot wiggle your way out of this stuff. This theory that he has, this theology theory, it won't work. When you get to Luke 17 and you get into Luke 21, and it doesn't work that way. And you'll notice most people that manipulate scripture and manipulate people they always seem to be in the book of Matthew. The book of Matthew is it's harder to read and it's a little more, emotional and, it's more flamboyant. And so whereas Mark is like really plain and simple and boring. They love Mark because they can just manipulate Matthew. They can just manipulate Matthew all day long. Everyone does it. But Luke is a lot closer to us and the way we speak and the way we think, being Gentiles. And you notice people like him don't go into Luke a lot. If something benefits them, they will. If something doesn't benefit them, they already have an argument when it comes to Greek. I could talk to C. Gregg and I can ask him certain words in Greek about things that he's probably never even thought of. He's not going to know what the Greek word is. He's not going to know. Maybe he will, but I doubt it. But when you ask him these these important topic points in defense of what he's saying, he's all over it, and everyone agrees with him for some reason. Good for you. That doesn't make any one of you right. Uh, so you need to be really careful about him or anyone else, even myself. Uh, what does it say? Look at the three synoptic gospels, and I have a video here. You can just sit there and follow along. When you go through them, and you try to say that around Matthew 35 or 24:35, I think he says, oh, it just stops, and then he starts, but then you go into Luke, and it continues on. So either Matthew's wrong, or Luke's wrong, or Steve's wrong, because it just keeps going. And even in our modern Bibles, uh, the sentences aren't really broken up that way. I've seen. Actually, I'd say most of them are, but not in the way. It's not like a chapter break or a topic break. It's continuous. It's just this, just like a stack of dominoes, and it goes down and it doesn't stop until they're all down. Only one only needs to look in Luke most of the time to find out what he's saying isn't accurate, and he tries to uh, marginalize and dismiss terms like mellow, and it's just not very good. It's I don't even know how to explain it. He is trying to rescue his own beliefs, and he's willing to do it. He's willing to really go out there and twist some things around in order um, to make it happen. But what's funny is, he took a second to call him a preterist, a cult, and maybe they are, but then that would make whoever follows you a cult as well, because people believe you, and you're a liar. You're a liar, Steve. You lie all the time. You lie to me, and you actually keep me from telling the truth. Which is funny because I've heard other people call your show and they're swearing almost, and they're talking about how you're stupid, you don't know anything, and dispensationalism and the rapture, and you love that stuff. You just sit there and you probably enjoy it because you can be a good Christian and be calm. But when it comes to truth, you hit that mute button and then you end the call. I know what you're doing. You're not that smart. Because everyone that pulls that type of stuff does the same thing. They all lie. They all lie the same way. It's a human trait, not a Steve Gregg trait. As a matter of fact, just listening to you, I got you pretty figured out about your early childhood and your life, the way it's gone. It's not that hard to figure out. Uh, I talk enough, you could probably figure me out if you're paying attention. But this constant diversion away from the truth into this theory that he has. Uh, if people are listening to it, you need to look at the information. You need to read the Bible by yourself. Don't read it with Steve Gregg. Don't read it with anyone else. Just read it. It will make sense. It will make sense. If you watch this video that I put out about putting the three synoptic gospels together, you'll see. You can just sit there and listen to me and follow along on your Bible, and you'll see how it makes sense. And you'll see later on how Steve manipulates the Bible and manipulates you. And he'll do it just to make himself feel better. He's not doing it for Jesus. He's doing it for himself, for his own ego, just so he'll be right. He talks about how the world's going to end. Well, it doesn't say the world's going to end anywhere. It may sound like it, but when you get to know the Greek, it's not. He doesn't know what heaven and earth is. Surprise there. I bet you he really does, but he's pretending like he doesn't. Terms like this, I mean, he knows what they are. He knows what it means. He knows what it could mean as well. You could take a position both ways, but he only takes one position, even though there's a lot of evidence that could prove that not right. But that's not his position. His position is to be right and to do whatever it takes to remain right. He talked about Jesus ascending to heaven, and Jesus is going to come back in like manner. Well, Jesus could have come back 2 seconds later, picked up all the apostles, went back up to heaven with them. The only reason you know about Jesus ascending to heaven is because the apostles told us. Josephus wasn't walking around taking a stroll and saw it. Hey, I saw this guy floating up in the air. And I walked over to these people and I said, hey, what's going on? No one saw it. So if he came back in like manner, pick up the apostles, took off again, especially at night, like a thief, when there's a war, when the Roman army's in there, surrounding the place, you're not going to know. I've been in combat. I've had things light up all around me. You don't know what's going on. I guarantee you, in some of those scenarios, if Jesus came down and grabbed a couple people and absconded back up to heaven, I'm not paying attention. I'm not gonna see anything. I doubt anyone else would either. It's probably why he waited for something like that to happen. The people that he did pick up, that he said he was going to pick up, left. They were out of the city, man. They were told when they saw the Roman army, the abomination of desolation, run. And that's what some people did. That's why in Matthew 24, 40, and 41, they're talking about the people leaving. One is received, one is left. Paralambantane and Alphiemi. This paralambante, everyone says taken, but really what it is received. They're saying, oh no, they're being given over to judgment. Well, someone has to give them to judgment in order to use that term properly, use that word properly. It doesn't say anywhere about Jesus giving anyone over to judgment. It doesn't say anything about God giving anyone over to judgment. It's just made up. It's a sleight of hand trick. And received is the ones that will leave to later be received. Alphiemi basically means cast off. They'll be left, they'll be cast off. In this verse, what it means is one will be received, they'll leave, and I'll receive them, Jesus, or the Son of Man, or God, or the angels, whoever it really was. And the other one will be left. Left where? Inside the city, surrounded by Romans. Where the eagles are, or the vultures are, there the bodies will be. They didn't get the message to leave because they didn't believe. Out of the people in the field, out of the people on the roof, people milling corn, grinding, being more technical, but usually it's two women were grinding. Out of all these people, out of the normal life that they're living, because Jesus said, it will be just like the days of Noah. Everyone will be going about their business, and then the flood will come. Same thing with Jesus. Everyone will be doing what they do, and then all of a sudden the Roman army is going to come. But he's emphasizing the people that are going to get out. The emphasis there is the ark or Lot. The people that got out and survived. You people, you remain, you stay on the alert, you don't get drunk, and you keep close watch. And when you see the abomination of desolation, as Luke showed was the Roman army, you book it and you leave. And then I'll come in and receive you. That's what it means. But they've changed it. They've changed it to accommodate this other theory that he takes, where Jesus, all of a sudden, everything just stops and Jesus is going to come back some other time. It doesn't work that way. Because he's talking to 4 people from Mark. And I think it's 13. I'm just going to double check. But so when he said that, the moment he said that in time to these 4 people, the last second, it's Mark 13. Okay. And apparently it was John because he was written he was writing, he was written about, he was a character in a later time. We have Revelation, so probably John. So let's just say out of those four people, Peter, James, John, and Andrew, 1 second, 1 second before the last breath of one of those four, whoever's the last one, the second they take their last breath and die on this earth, that's it. That's the time frame. And you cannot get out of it. You cannot work, you cannot sit here and say, oh, time just stopped, or all this other nonsense. It's an absolute lie. You cannot stop time. You cannot stop what Jesus is saying. There is a sequence and a timeline, and it just keeps going. There's a timeline in Daniel, there's a timeline in Revelation, and they all add up. They're all the same. And you can even see it if you really compare them. And you'll notice that there's a timeline. And this guy goes in and out of sequence all the time. It doesn't make any sense. It's a lie. And he knows it. But he'll still lie to you because he thinks he's right. Jehovah's Witnesses do the same thing. They'll claim one thing, and then they'll say something is true, but they have no attestation for it in the middle. That's okay. They'll just lie to you. That's fine. Because in their religion, as long as the means justify the ends, I think I said that correctly. The ends justify the means. I don't know how to say that correctly, but what I'm saying is we know what's going to happen in the end because we're smart. We have special knowledge. But the Bible and the information on this earth doesn't get us there. But that's all right. You can lie about it because as long as we get to the end, we're fine. The Mormons do the same thing. They'll lie. They'll lie about everything. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Because what happens in the end is what's real. It doesn't matter if it's factual or not. Because they've already made up their mind. Steve Gregg is no different. This is his end goal. He'll lie, manipulate, steal, cheat, murder. He'll do whatever it takes to be right. That's what's important to him. Okay? To be right. That's just like the Pharisees. They wanted to be right. And they were going to be right. And Jesus came up, told them they were wrong. Well, guess what? You're gone. You don't think people like Steve Gregg have proven themselves time and time again to be the same exact type of person as those Pharisees? When I called him up, he didn't talk to me. He just hung up because he knew what I was going to say, the truth. And he can't defend against the truth. Even in his emails, he couldn't do it. Barnum did the same thing. They all do the same thing. They'll just lie and manipulate. And honestly, Bart Ehrman actually conducted himself way better than Steve Gregg did. And Bart Ehrman claims to be an atheist. Right, Steve? Bart Ehrman is more Christian than you are in this sense. So people need to be really, really careful of people like him because he says the right things and he's pretty good. But then you'll notice in his tapes, all of a sudden he'll just interject something. And it's weird. It's out of place. And it is out of place because it's out of the sequence. It's out of the timeline that Jesus put down. So it doesn't fit. It doesn't make any sense. So when he starts giving these alternate views of what he's saying, you need to really be paying attention. Really be paying attention. Because he just does not seem to care about being honest. He's more interested in his own opinion, in his own views. So I don't really know what else to say, but I did want to finish it with this, and I wanted to show you how simple this was, how simple this is. What Jesus was saying. The first step is you have to figure out what Christ was actually saying. And Steve is pretty good about that. When he was saying generation, he meant, the people he was talking to. In reality, he was talking, let's say he was talking to John. Let's say John had a son. There's another generation. 20 years go by, that son has another son. So now John's a grandfather. So that's 3 generations on earth. So we're talking about, let's just say 40 years even. Okay? So you got John, you got the son of John, and then you got John's grandson. That's 3 generations. You could term it like that, and you could stretch it out. And some people try to make it sound like that, but then they twist it a little more. But that's about as far as you can go. John's grandchild, a 3rd generation. So you got 3 generations living at the time in 70. That's as far as you can take it. And again, you have until the death of John. And people just love, oh, John was 150 years old when he died. I don't think so. If he's in some kind of labor camp, let me tell you, he's not living the good life. If he's sick, he could get sick and he could die real quick. They didn't have modern medicine back then. I don't know how old he was. Obviously, he wrote Revelation. We're talking around 65, 70, and maybe a little later. And maybe he was taken up, what they call, and what Paul defines in 1 Thessalonians 4, being harpazo, being hooked, caught up. People call it the rapture. I try to stay away from that term because it's confusing. I don't mean rapture how other people mean rapture, but that's the word that people are referring to. But what did Jesus say? He said this, he said that is a timeline. You can look at the other 3 Gospels, done. Okay. What did Jesus say was going to happen? New heaven and new earth, right? Go to Revelation 20, the end of Revelation 20. New heavens, new earth. It fled away at the sight of God. It didn't burn up. Nothing burned up. Nothing. It just says the Greek word is disappeared. Okay, fled away. It disappeared. Just gone. Now, heaven and earth is an old Jewish term, and it means just that. Heaven, air, earth, land. Earth and land. And it's a new earth and land. If you break up with your girlfriend and you sell your house and you sell all your stuff and you move to Africa so you can be with the safari animals and you destroy your cell phone and okay, there's no going back. It's unambiguous that you're not going back, okay? It's a new heaven and a new earth. That's all that really means. It's new. Brand new life. You're not going back to her. You're not going back to your old life, your old job. You've completely detached yourself. It's different. It's almost like working at a factory. Someone comes and buys you out. Instead of the Jews running the company, now God's running the company. Hoorah! Get a better contract. Everything's still the same. You still come in at 9. You still got the same job. But things are completely different. Okay? New contract. New agreement. New covenant. New heaven. New earth. That's all that's saying. There's no destruction of the earth anywhere. It doesn't talk about that. Where in Revelation does it talk about the entire destruction of our planet? Nowhere. And don't give me this 2 Peter chapter 3. That don't cut it either. Because he's very specific that he talks about the world being destroyed. He used the word cosmos. But then when he's talking about the destruction that everyone says is the end of the world, he's using the word land. Okay? Those are 2 very different things. Okay? There's no worldwide destruction anywhere described. The most destruction that's described in Revelation is a third. A third of the earth is burned up. And the rivers are covered in blood. The sea's covered. The Sea of Galilee. What sea are you referring to? It's the center of the earth, okay, is Jerusalem. That's the center of the world. Is Jerusalem. Okay? Then it was Rome. Then now it's probably New York City. But back then, the center of the universe, the center of the world, it was Jerusalem and the temple. That's where it was. That's what they're referring to. When people talk about 9/11, you think this, if you didn't know any better, you think this is happening all over the world, but it's not. It's compartmentalized to a certain area. It's bad. 70 AD was bad. Jesus tried to tell them about it in chapter 23 of Matthew. You guys are screwed, and you're stupid, and I'm sitting here trying to warn you. You're just not getting it. So, bye. That's what he said. He's like, I tried to gather you on my wings, but you wouldn't come to me. Now I leave you, desolate. Bye. You can't do anything. And that's why Jesus, these people that say Jesus hasn't come back yet, I don't know why they keep saying Jesus hasn't come back, for one, because he says the Son of Man. He never says him. Son of Man. So we don't really even know what that is. Furthermore, but based on that, I mean, who's Jesus waiting for? If Jesus cut them off back then, these people are not waiting around. If you think Jesus is coming back and he's just waiting for some temple to get rebuilt or God knows what, I don't even know what Steve Gray's excuse is, but it ain't happening, man. Okay? There's nothing that says the world's going to be destroyed. There's nothing that's saying the whole world's going to be replaced by this New Jerusalem. You know, it's not even something that's physical. I mean, you can clearly tell that it's not. He's just trying to describe, you know, metaphorically what's happening, what the new world is going to consist of. And there's one for people that are on earth and living like we are now. And then there's another place where you go when you die. But that's it. And there's nothing saying that this world's going to be burned up. Nowhere. It just doesn't exist. Even Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. I mean, I'm not from here. I doubt anyone even cares. This is, for all intents and purposes, this earth that we're in, it's just a proving ground for us earthlings. And we're earthlings now. And when we die, depending on what we did here, will determine if we continue on. Either you stop living, you know, I don't know about the fiery death for eternity thing, but this is just the beginning for some people. It's just the beginning. And this whole notion of, you know, he can't see, you know, the resurrection and judgment of these people. To put it properly, there is something called the Old Covenant. And God said, look, if you keep my covenant, you're good. Just like now. You keep the covenant and I'll love you. And you're fine. What do you think? Jesus died and went down to Sheol and said, hey guys and gals, look, we know that you were good. Some of you were bad. But we're going to do this new thing. It's called the New Covenant. And you have to wait a little while longer until you're resurrected and judged. So, you know, a couple thousand years, maybe more. We're not sure. I don't know. Only the Father knows. So I guess you're just going to sit here and wait. And, oh, and by the way, the people of the New Covenant, they get to go to heaven as soon as they die. But you have to stay here for some reason. That makes a lot of sense. Right, Steve? Everything's just centered around the Christians, right? Or what's referred to as Christians. Those Jews, you know, they're just down in the middle of the earth still, just waiting around. Even though it talks about resurrection in Matthew. I think it's Matthew 27. But that doesn't matter. I'm sure you've manipulated your way out into that as well into something else. So, the audacity to think that all the Jews of the Mosaic era, good and bad, are just sitting around waiting. And a lot of people will use an excuse, and I've heard this excuse before, where, oh, well, the good ones are taken up to heaven, it even says in Revelation. So, for some reason, even though there wasn't a separation or a judgment, even though it says there is, you know, the right ones, the sheep come to the right and get your reward. This is Matthew 25. And then the ones on the left, the goats, you know, your eternal damnation. You know, but for some reason they can bypass these sequences and timelines and get it to say whatever they want it to say, but they don't know what they're talking about. Not at all. And they know they're lying. They have to. Nobody's that stupid. But they are stupid because they're lying about it. And they know they're going to get it worse. they're going to get it worse than someone else who doesn't believe in God at all, because they're using God's name. It's just like these mega preachers that live in $50 million private planes. I mean, those guys are screwed, and gals, they're screwed. Way more than, they're probably going to get it worse than Hitler. Hitler used the name of God all the time too, so I'm sure he's catching shit for that. But these people that go around and convince people, and thank God a lot of people did continue on, and that's what I'm emphasizing here. That listen to Steve Gregg, listen to this Jordan Peterson guy. I got a neighbor that was listening to him. Listen to him. That's fine, but don't think everything they say is correct. Don't think everything I'm saying is correct. I got videos. I could take you through the New Testament, and I could show you all these things. And all these things in the middle, everything that everyone gets caught up on, you can bypass that. Who cares what Paul says? You think Paul's going to say anything that's out of line with Christ? No. So you can just take what Christ said. What did Christ say? Heaven and earth will pass away. It's going to happen. You'll stand before the Son of Man. What was that, Luke 21, like 39, 36, something like that? Pray that you'll have the strength to persevere through all these things that are about to take, all these things that are about to take place. He uses that word mellow. Yeah, it does. About to, it's in a context. So when you use it in the context of this Luke 21, it's going to happen, and you will stand before the Son of Man. You. And that's another thing. He tries to you doesn't mean you. I don't know if Steve Gregg actually listens to his own videos, but I think he should. Because he sounds stupid. And I really don't think he looks at his own videos. Because if he did, he would see how stupid he is. His manipulation tactics he'd probably have to change them. He'd probably look at him and said, you know what, I better learn how to manipulate people a little differently. Might change his tactics, because the way he's doing it right now is just lazy. That's not even good. It's bad. It's lazy. It's bad. I know he's like a hippie, spoiled hippie kid. Is used to not being. He's a snowflake, like our monarchs. You can't tell him no. Can't tell him to come to work on time. You hurt their feelings, and that's how Steve is. He's just a big baby. So I doubt he even cares or listens to anything. But I'm not really so concerned with him. I'm concerned with the people that listen to him. So listen to him. But beware. Beware of what he says. And if you're paying attention, and I think this is why people kind of walk away from him, because he slips this stuff in and it's really obvious. And they start to continue on. And they see that water in the desert. And they're like, Steve says wait here, but he actually leads you to it, which is kind of strange. He leads you to it, but then he turns around and says, oh, it's not there. But a lot of people who are studying and reading and paying attention, they can see it. They can just say, I don't see how this stops. It's not stopping. So I don't know what else to tell you. My advice is to never, ever take on a theology or a religion or a view, or I like this author, or I like Steve, or I like John MacArthur, I like the Pope. It just makes me feel good, and whatever they say is, that's a real bad thing. You have to be independent of everything on this planet, because what is important isn't here on earth. Don't try to fit yourself in somewhere in some theological view. Don't try to, I think I'm a round peg, and I'm going to go try to find a round peg to fit myself into. Because anyone who knows better knows that anything on earth is just worthless. You're not better than it. You're not above it. You're not sticking your nose up at it. It's just, it's all going to fade away. Just like that temple. it's going to be destroyed. There won't be one block on top of each other. It's going to go away. This world is going to remain. You're going to go away. But are you still going to try to remain in this world? Are you like these people that I'm going to eat healthy and jog every day and I want to live forever? You're going to have to die sooner or later. You're going to have to face the music. That's why some people, when they come close to dying, they freak out because they didn't think it was going to end so soon. And they're afraid. They don't really know what it is, but they know what it is. They're going to die, and they weren't expecting to. And they know it's on the other side. And it's not good. It's not a good thing. But they think they have all the time in the world. But they don't. No one does. And this earth, you're in the earth, you're in the world, but don't make any plans. Don't build a solid foundation. And that's why in Revelation 21 they use these tent terms, because it's temporary. Your body's temporary. You're temporary. You're here to either get it or don't get it. And you're not going to get it when you fill your head up with things like the things Steve Gregg is saying or John MacArthur is saying, because you can see how incredibly dangerous it is. And even preterism. Let's say you become a preterist. I don't know, what's this Don Preston guy? Okay. And you just, oh, wow, he's so smart. You just fill your head. Well, then you close yourself off to everything else. And every time you read the Bible, someone's reading it for you. You're not thinking for yourself. You're not going to God and say, what does Luke 24 mean? I don't get it. Show me the way. No, you just listen to John MacArthur and he tells you something and, oh, okay. And then Steve Gregg comes along. You're like, you know what? I like what he says better. I identify with him. You're identifying with earthly things. You don't want that. And you're rejecting the greatest teacher of all, and that's God. God created this earth. He created everything. He created you. You don't think that he can't guide you to what you ask to be guided to? He'll give you whatever you want. You want Steve Gregg, he'll give you all the Steve Gregg you can handle. But if you want God, if you go to God and say, look, I don't care what it is. I just want you. I'm curious about this. I want to know what this is. I don't want the knowledge, but I want the understanding. What does it mean? And he'll show you. And it's that simple. I did it. And I got Steve Gregg. And I'm happy for it. And I was paying attention. And I was really studying and praying. And I started to learn all the things that he was saying that wasn't true. And I don't hate him for it. I don't hate Steve Gregg. He's just doing what everyone else does. Again, Bart Ehrman does it. Everyone does it. Or politicians do it. The problem is that you didn't think someone like Steve Gregg would do that. But he will. He has. He does. This video he just did shown that he hasn't changed a bit. He's still on it. And he'll lie to you, and he's just kept with the same pattern, the same modus operandi. He's not going to change. And you can go where he's going to go in the end, or you can go towards God. You can go towards God and be with God. But you have to be with him now. You have to be with him now, and you have to be able to be guided by him, because it's a personal relationship. What's good for me and what's good for you are two very different things. God he might want you to become a Mormon. I don't know. Because maybe you have to become a Mormon to figure out what you need to figure out. If you're praying and you're asking and you're getting answers, it will just happen. And it will be great. And you don't need people like Steve Gregg or me or anyone else, because he will lead you to us. He led me to Steve. He led me to other people. Even non-religious stuff, like driving around in my car and having someone cut me off. You learn from it. And you say, I get that. That's what repentance is. Now I know why you're not supposed to stick a knife and fork it in the electrical socket. I get it now. Thank you, Father. That's what it is. You pray to him and you say, thank you. I would like more. Help me turn away.